A man walks into a marketplace, grabs a sack of grain, and tries to slip away unnoticed. He doesn't get far. The punishment? Not a fine, not even jail. Instead, his hand is chopped off, right there in the middle of the street. No trial, no second chances. That was justice thousands of years ago. And if you think that's extreme, wait until you hear what happened to builders whose houses collapsed, or women accused of speaking out of turn. We like to think of laws as tools for fairness, but in the ancient world, laws weren't designed to be fair. They were designed to be feared. Some of the earliest legal codes were brutal, rigid, and left absolutely no room for mercy. But who wrote them? And why were they so obsessed with extreme punishment? Let's go back, way back, to some of the first written laws in human history and uncover the shocking and sometimes downright terrifying rules that shaped civilization. The first laws written in stone. The year is 1754 BC, and we're in ancient Babylon, one of the most powerful empires the world had ever seen. The great King Hammurabi is about to unveil something that will change history. A massive black stone covered in strange symbols. But this isn't art, it's law. The Code of Hammurabi is one of the oldest legal systems ever written. It has 282 laws, carved into a 7-foot-tall slab of diorite, standing like an unbreakable pillar of order. And these laws, they make modern justice look soft. Break into someone's house, death. Accuse someone falsely, death. A doctor botches a surgery, his hand is cut off. Hammurabi believed in something called lex talionis, the law of retaliation. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. If you knocked out another man's tooth, your tooth would be pulled out too. There was no sympathy, no second chances. And yet this was considered an improvement. Before Hammurabi, justice was chaotic, revenge was personal, and the strong ruled over the weak. His laws, brutal as they were, at least gave structure. But the real nightmare, Babylon wasn't the only civilization that took law enforcement to the extreme. Egypt, where the wrong word could end your life. While Babylon was busy enforcing the Code of Hammurabi, ancient Egypt had its own set of laws, though many of them weren't written down. Pharaohs, seen as gods on earth, were the ultimate lawgivers. Cross them, and your fate is worse than death. One of the worst crimes in ancient Egypt, lying. If you were caught giving false testimony, you weren't just punished, you had your tongue cut out. Even worse, if you were found guilty of treason, you didn't just die, you were erased from history. Your name was chipped off monuments, your statues were destroyed, and your existence was completely wiped from memory. To the Egyptians, this was called damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. It was a fate worse than execution, because in their belief system, without a name, you couldn't enter the afterlife. But if you think that's harsh, let's travel even further back, to a place where the law wasn't just extreme, it was divine. Sumerians, the first known laws in history. Before Babylon, before Egypt, before anything, there was Sumer, the first known civilization, located in present-day Iraq. And with civilization came the need for laws. Enter the Code of Ur-Nammu, written around 2100 BC, the oldest legal code we've ever found. Ur-Nammu's laws were slightly more forgiving than Hammurabi's. Instead of cutting off body parts, fines were often used as punishment. But don't be fooled, there was still plenty of bloodshed. One of the laws states, if a man commits murder, that man shall be killed. Another, if a man knocks out the tooth of another man, he must pay a fine. This might sound progressive, but here's where things take a dark turn. The punishment depended on who you were. Wealthy citizens often got away with just a fine, while the poor faced brutal consequences. Sound unfair? Welcome to the birth of class-based justice. Ancient China, the bloodiest justice system. If you think the ancient laws we've covered so far were ruthless, China might take the crown for cruelty. During the Qin Dynasty, 221 to 206 BC, laws were designed to crush opposition. One of the most infamous punishments? The 5 pains. It started with cutting off the nose, then the left foot, then the right hand, then castration, and finally, execution. The goal? To make an example out of criminals in the most horrifying way possible. And what crimes could get you this treatment? Disrespecting an official, talking back, even failing to report a crime. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, believed fear kept order. His laws weren't just about punishing criminals. They were about destroying rebellion before it even started. The Roman twist, a law that never dies. Not all ancient laws faded away. Some of them lasted thousands of years. Enter Roman law, which shaped legal systems still used today. But back in the early days of Rome, justice was anything but civilized. Ever heard of patria potestas? This was the law that gave Roman fathers absolute power over their families. A father could legally sell his children into slavery, disown them, or even kill them. No questions asked. And then there were the punishments. If a Roman soldier deserted his army, he wasn't just executed. His fellow soldiers were ordered to beat him to death. This practice, called decimation, was as brutal as it sounds. 1 in every 10 men in a guilty legion was chosen at random and clubbed to death by their own comrades. But Rome also gave us something important: laws that lasted. Many of today's legal principles, contracts, property rights, and even trial procedures trace their origins back to Rome. So, while their justice system could be terrifying, it also laid the foundation for modern law. Here are 3 insane legal facts you probably didn't know. Number 1. Babylon had a test to prove innocence, and it was deadly. If you were accused of a crime and had no way to prove your innocence, you might be thrown into the river. If you drowned, you were guilty. If you survived, the gods had spared you, so you were innocent. Number 2. Cutting off ears as punishment was common. In medieval Europe and Asia, thieves and liars often had their ears sliced off. This way, everyone could see they were criminals, and they couldn't hide their past mistakes. Number 3. In ancient Persia, judges who took bribes were skinned alive. The worst part? Their skins were then used to upholster the next judge's chair. A gruesome reminder to stay honest. We like to believe that justice has always been about fairness, but history tells a different story. Ancient laws weren't about protecting people. They were about controlling them. They were designed to keep power in the hands of the elite and to terrify everyone else into obedience. And yet without them, civilization as we know it wouldn't exist. So, the next time you complain about a speeding ticket, just be glad you're not in ancient Babylon, because back then, breaking the rules could cost you a lot more than money. Please subscribe to our channel today if you haven't already done so. You can also check out other videos on this channel. Best Time Quest.